Hi there, welcome to episode 12 of Yarns and Yarns. I'm Shay McIntosh Ford and I live in Tulsa with my husband, our two boys, and our spoiled little puppy. Today is Saturday, March 6th, and I'm surprised I'm recording on a Saturday. This is actually my second take. I decided to try to do a straight recording and just edit at the end. And so I have over an hour of me talking, and I had no idea that my mic wasn't working. So this is take two. Normally I don't get to record on a Saturday at all. Leo and the boys are camping this weekend. Charlie just graduated into Boy Scouts, and William joined the Boy Scouts. So they're going on their first camping trip with Charlie as a scout. We're excited about that, but that means I have the whole house to myself since yesterday afternoon until tomorrow afternoon. Lots of time to try to get a recording done. I had hoped to just crank it out this morning, but obviously it didn't work. So my lighting is going to probably change. This is getting to be the afternoon, early afternoon, and the sun is going to come blazing through the window here in a little bit. I might actually change to a different seat in the house. But anyway, the other thing I'm doing differently is I made notes on paper instead of on the computer. And this is funny because this is my normal like journal book. This is it's so blown out. So this is the front. This is how I write. When I'm just journaling, I literally just fill the whole page. That's what I do. I don't paragraph, nothing when I'm journaling. And I didn't want to break that up, starting from where I left off in my journal. I went to the back and I started writing on this back page because I wouldn't be able to read my notes if I wrote them the way I journal. Too much writing. This is a show about yarns as in fibers and yarns as in stories. For fibery stuff, it's mostly knitting, crochet. I have a new endeavor going on that I'm very excited about, but I don't know how far I'm going to get there. And I'll get into that with the whips. Yarns as in stories. I am a writer. I have a couple published books. I'm still working on another one. I haven't been in the right headspace for writing very much because of the pandemic and my health issues right now. I do lots of reading, so we're going to talk about a few books I've been reading lately. The first FO is my mom's shawl. It's called the Trickle Shawl, and it is completely done. I just need to block it, and it is beautiful. It is so soft. The material that this yarn makes is just, it feels like a cloud. It is so nice and soft and squishy. This is a pattern by Jennifer Lassonde. It's a paid-for pattern, but I didn't pay for it. I won it with the Stocking Stuffers make-along that was hosted by Lisa from Knit All the Yarn podcast and Amy from Happy Little Yarn. And I'm sorry if my voice is going already. I've already been talking for over an hour, thinking I was recording properly. So hopefully it lasts for the day. This is where I was. Oh, sunlight is too bright. This is where I was the last time you saw it. It's a little kitty stitch marker from the Cat Lady Yarns. And that's where I was the last time you saw it, and didn't take me long to finish the rest of it. It's mostly garter stitches. There's some slip stitches in the middle where you get the trickle effect. It's hard to see because I haven't blocked it yet, so it's not setting properly. And so sorry, I'm not flipping you off. The slip stitches, there's a middle row that goes long, and then there's a shorter one and a shorter one. So it trickles down, it ends, and that's why it's called the Trickle Shawl. This yarn is the Cat Lady yarn. And here is, oh, the sun. I'm gonna have to do something about the sun.
I'm going to move the sun.
I moved to my kitchen or dining room table, and it's not as exciting behind me. It's just the blank wall. The only problem about sitting here is because it's the dining table, and every time I sit down, the puppy thinks she needs another TREAT every time. So hopefully I don't have to get up too much, but I only brought a few things over for the moment, so yes, I'm going to have to give her more later. Anyway, so here I am. So this is, oops, that's the wrong one. So as I was saying, this is the Cat Lady Yarns, and it's the Blue Nile colorway, and it's the Possumly Soft Merino. It's a 17 micron base, and I talked about this last week. The lower the number of microns, the softer it is, which is basically because the diameter of the fiber is so much smaller. The thicker the fiber, the coarser the fiber. Oh, this is so soft. You can see it a little better now. But I love the way it's tonal with little pops of the dark blue as well. My mom wanted this color because she wears lots of teal. It just came out beautiful. I am so excited about this. I do need to block it so it's, you know, not laying flat. The interesting thing that I did for the first time on this pattern was the bind off. It's an I-cord bind off. I had never done that before. It makes a nice, really neat edge. The only thing is, while you're doing it, it seems to take forever. It's almost like doing an extra 4 rows really slowly. Because every time you bind off, you have to knit an extra 3 stitches and then bind off 1, knit 3 again, and you're knitting the same ones. Yeah, it just took a long time. Yeah, I like this one. Needle that I used was the US 8, size 8 needle. And I used and I left it over there. I'll show it to you later. I'm using it for another project, so you'll see the needle. But it's the Chow Goose Twist, so it's the interchangeable needles. I haven't had a problem with them twisting off, you know, or getting, you know, catching the yarn. Those were great, and I think I used the 50-inch cord. The other thing is, on this pattern, you can make it so that it tells you how many rows to knit before you start trickling again, or you can do the percentage version. So you would, you know how much you start with, how many grams in your yarn, and then after you get to the first trickle section, you weigh the yarn, and then you have this much percentage, you have used up this much percentage yarn, should have used up this much percentage yarn at your first trickle, and then at your next trickle, you should have used up this much percentage. So that way, you know, you can make it bigger if you want, or if you just want to use up all your yarn, you can do that. And I wanted to use up as much of the yarn as I could, except for about 10 grams I wanted to keep so that I could have a square or two in my coziest memory blanket. My next FO, the sock head hat. I made another one, and this is the October Graffiti. And I love the way it striped but pooled sort of at the same time. You know, these purple tones, they kind of pooled along in the striping, which I think was really cool. I love the way that came out. This, again, is the Cat Lady Yarns. I got all my hair. Hair is falling out, which is why I wear hats a lot. The only thing that I did differently, so this is a free pattern on Ravelry. It's the sock head hat pattern by Kelly Mcclure. The thing I did differently is it calls for a 4-inch rib, 2x2 rib, and I did that on the first sock head hat that I made. It's okay, but it means folding the brim, and I don't like fooling with that so much. I still like the hat, and I still wear that hat, but I wanted a hat that I didn't have to fuss with. So I did the 2x2 so I don't have to fold it. So this is what it looks like when you're wearing it. A little slouchy. And I'm wondering if I need to block it, because if I make it just stretch out just a little bit more, maybe it'll slouch just a little more. I think I got impatient with the end of it. I just wanted to get done because it's just beautiful hat, beautiful colors. I went to Michael's and I saw palms there. I'm eventually going to attach a palm, this palm like right here, because I think it goes really well with the colors in the hat. I've never attached a palm before, and I don't really know how it works. All it is, it looks like a hair tie. So I'm like, how do you attach that? So I'm gonna have to look up some videos on YouTube. I don't know, maybe I got the wrong kind of palm. I don't know. This is, again, the Cat Lady yarns, and this colorway is October Graffiti, and this is her perfect sock base, the 80/20. She's very cat themed, so that's why it's perfect sock. It's cute. She doesn't have any more of the October Graffiti in the perfect sock that I know of. I think I bought the last two, and sadly the season is ending because it's now March and we're getting into spring, so I'm not gonna be able to wear it too much longer. And it's getting warmer. It's in the 60s today, but I might just buck tradition and wear it anyway because I like it. And for this hat, I used Chalgu's red lace, so they're not interchangeable. The pattern calls for a size 3. I didn't have 3, I had 2s. So that's what I used. 2.75 millimeter needle. I think it's a 46-inch cord, red lace cord. I think it came out okay. I think next time I might make the extra large because this is the size, the large size. I have a big head anyway, and I used small needles, so I think maybe next time I'll go for the extra large size. The skein was 115 grams, and I think by the end of this I had 42 grams left. I want to say 42 for reasons we'll get into when I talk about books. Now on to hose. I wasn't going to show this one because it is a gift for someone, but I don't know that they actually know that it's coming to them at all. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do it because there's a long story behind it. So I made another dragon scale glove. This one, it's the right one here. Tuck in my ends here. So that's that. There is a long story behind these. So I haven't made the other one yet. I need to because I need to get these out. I wanted warm colors, right? Reds and yellows and oranges. That's hard to find right now because it's spring, right? I did find the mani-pedi sock yarn had warm colors. The colorway is called Mittens, if I can get, there it is. So it's called Mittens. This, by the way, is a 75/25 superwash and polyamide. So I got these yarns. They looked like it was all warm colors. And then I went to grab the center pull from the ball of yarn. It was blue, or maybe it was purple. I don't remember which color, but it was cool colors. So, and I could see it when I bought the yarn, I could see there was a little bit of blue and purple in there, but I thought, it looks like it's mostly warm colors. 30% of it was cool colors. I decided I was going to cut and do the magic knot ties. And it was frustrating because there were sections of cool color that were only like 12 inches long, and then it'd be red, and then it'd be purple or blue, and then red. So I was cutting and magic knot tying for a very long time. I went to get started and I realized this yarn is really thin. I think this might be too thin for these gloves. And I took a look. I hadn't paid attention because, you know, sock yarn makes gloves too. But this is super fine, number 1 size yarn. The pattern calls for number 2, which I realized by then that when I made these, it's the same issue. But this happens to be, this is Patton's Croy, so it's a little fluffier yarn. So even though I made the large, it still kind of came out small. So I realized, okay, well, I'm just gonna have to hold them double. So I caked them up. After I did all the magic knot tying, I caked them up. I didn't want the gloves to be stripy, so I wanted a more marled look. So when I held it double, it would just pool more than stripe. And so when I caked it up, they came out the same. The cakes were identical. So I caked from the outside of the other one to get different ones. So basically the yarn is, it goes from cool colors to warm colors, and there's no repeats. At least it didn't seem like there was. So I caked it up so they would be different when I crocheted them double. If I had known that I was going to be holding it double, I would not have done so much magic knot tying. I would have left a little bit of blue and purple. I mean, there were parts where it was like a lot of purple. Here is blues and purples from that skein of yarn. So there were parts where it was lots and lots of blues and purples. So I'm gonna run out of yarn. When I get to the second glove, those two skeins are all I have left right now. So I'm not gonna have enough. I'm gonna have to buy another one. I have plans for this. This is one where it's a whole bunch of purple. And so I have plans for just the purple. I hope. I'll explain that later in the whips. That's the story behind these gloves. But I do like the way it turned out. I like how pretty it is with all the marled looking colors in it. This, if you're not familiar with it, it's called a crocodile stitch. This is crochet. It's a crocodile stitch here, these scales, and it just comes out really nice. And then these are half double crochets in the palm, so you don't have dragging scales while you're trying to hold stuff. I like the way it was designed, and I used an e-hook. So this is the hook, and I will never understand all the ways they talk about numbers. And I remember one time I was at Joann's or Michael's, and a fellow was behind me in line buying yarn, and he was asking, or it was yarns or needles. Yarns, needles, or hooks. I think it was, he had yarn, but he was looking for needles and hooks. And he said he was buying it for his wife. She needed a certain size. So I told him that to make sure that he was talking about the number, it was probably needles, that she was talking about the number size and not the millimeter size, because the millimeters are very different. You'll get a whole different size. But I don't understand the letter thing on crochet hooks. Why do they have letters? I just, yeah. I don't math very well, so I'm sure there's an explanation that I just don't know about. And the last thing I wanted to say about these gloves is, because I was holding them double, I decided to make the small medium, and it came out to be about the same size as the medium large for this glove, so which is held single. It's probably because holding it double makes the right size yarn. It pays to read all the directions. On to whips my first one is this dragon scale glove. This is the one where I played yarn chicken last episode. There's a reason why it's been a long time. There usually is a reason. I'm having health issues, and I will get into that in the life stuff. So I finished just the edging, the scalloped edging. Super simple, super quick. I went to start the next one, and this is as far as I got. I just did a few of the crocodile stitches, and that's it. It's not mindless. There's a lot of counting involved and a lot of double checking. I always, for some reason, my numbers are always off. I don't know why. I always have to kind of finagle it a little bit. I still like the gloves. This is the Patton's Croy socks in the Gentry Gray. There it is. And this is 75/25 wool nylon, and like I said, it's the same hook, but I made the large size for this one. And even then, I'm trying to make sure that my stitches are relaxed, because I have a tendency to stitch a little too tight, especially when I get to the half double crochets. I'm trying to make it as loose as I can. When I do the crocodile stitch, it doesn't matter too much because it's part of the crocodile pattern, so that doesn't go around my hand. But yeah, the part that does the V stitches and the half doubles, I'm trying to make sure I'm stitching very loosely. Oh, I forgot to show you. The Super Bowl went on since my last show. That was kind of exciting for me. If you didn't know, I was actually born in Tampa. I lived there most of my life. I hated living there. It was hot and very, very muggy. And I like seasons. I like the change of seasons. That's why I managed to talk my husband to leaving. There's a long story behind that, but anyway, he loves Florida. I hate it. I had to go ahead and order my Super Bowl champions t-shirt. And this is the t-shirt that I got the last time the Bucs won the Super Bowl. They don't win very often. I think this is only their second win, their second time being in it, and their second win. Yeah, it's been a while because you can see the neckline of this t-shirt is very, very frayed. So this is an old one. I had to get another one just to celebrate. I guess the next time they win, I'll just have to buy another one, right? But because we live in Tulsa, I'm a little like wondering what people think of me when I'm out and about wearing this, because I'm sure most people around here were cheering for Casey. Oh, I've already put them away, but I forgot to say that the Dragon Scale gloves, the pattern is a paid-for pattern by Rachel Barlow. I don't remember how much it was. I think she's a British designer because you could buy it in pounds. So you can get that on Ravelry. I think it was only like $4. My next whip is my hooded mantle. So these are the needles that I use to make the trickle shawl. They are the Chow Goose twist, so the interchangeable needles, but I never have a problem with them twisting loose and coming off while I'm working. And then the 50-inch cord. I haven't gotten very far. I basically had the hood done the last time you saw it, picked up the stitches to start the mantle part, and that's all I've done. I procrastinated on this for 2 reasons. The primary reason being because I was getting spoiled knitting with the Cat Ladies yarn. It was really nice to work with. And then trying to knit with this cheap acrylic yarn in comparison was like, no, I want to knit with more Cat Lady yarn. So that was the first reason for the procrastination. And the second reason is because I'm not really much of a fan of picking up stitches, and there were 98 stitches to pick up. I always feel like I'm placing them wrong, like they're too bunched up or too spread out. I did know, I had a midpoint, so I divided it by 2 so that I could get to the midpoint and know that I'm getting there, kinda. The other thing that I'm doing different on here that I wasn't aware that I would be working on is I do a garter stitch border. I decided to have it an open mantle. It'll have buttons. I think I'm going to look for toggles instead of making buttonholes and sewing buttons on. I'm going to try to get some toggles to go on the front because of the collar of the dress that I have. So this is, like I said, it's acrylic yarn. It's the Loops and Threads Soft and Shiny in the Parsley colorway. It's 100% acrylic, and I did that on purpose because it's just a costume, so it didn't need to be, I didn't want to use expensive wool. The Renaissance Fair is in May, and I didn't want to be too hot. Pattern is by Anne Demoy, and it is a paid-for pattern on Ravelry. I'm not going to bother showing you the yellow one. I showed it a couple of times already. It's the Care-On Simply Soft. I haven't used it yet. Yet. I'll use it when I get to the bottom of the mantle and I do the border around the bottom. Then I'll show it to you again. But it's just the Sunshine colorway and the Care-On Simply Soft. My next whip, I hadn't planned on starting yet. I was trying to save this for mindless knitting because I am going to be flying out to Denver in a month, and I'm going to be staying there for a week, and I wanted simple, small, mindless knitting to bring with me, but I couldn't resist. This yarn is so nice. I took what was left of the October graffiti from the first skein, and I started a sock head cowl to match my hat. It calls for a 4-inch rib, 2x2 rib. I decided to just go with 3 inches. I didn't need to be 4. I knitted the entire rest of the skein up to here. So that's this much. So that's all of the rest of the first skein, and then I joined it. I didn't intend to knit this much already. I had an appointment with a Honda dealership because of a recall, so I was just going to be sitting in the waiting room anyways. I brought this with me. It was nice and small and simple. So what I'm doing here is I put stitch markers at approximately every inch because I need to knit 12 more inches before I start the next 3-inch 2x2 rib before I finish it off. And it's easier to count my inches by using stitch markers, and to keep me from having to measure every time, I know that for my gauge I get about a little over 11 rows per inch. Once I get to the 12th stitch marker, I'm still going to have to knit just a little bit more to get 12 inches, but that's what these markers are marking. There's my rows. I will be working on this while I'm on the plane and in Denver. I am going to have to isolate quite a bit because it's all for because I'm a COVID long hauler and I'm not getting decent care here, so that's why I'm going to Denver, and they require that I isolate for 2 weeks before and 2 weeks while I'm there. So I will have plenty to knit, I hope. And if I have enough left over, this is my cake. Oh, I love that. The pops of orange, like plaid right there. The orange and green and purple. If I have enough left over when I'm done with the cowl, I would like to start the fingerless gloves, the not convertible mitts. I'm gonna go get them so you understand what I'm talking about. These are my not convertible mitts, which I showed you before. But if you remember, I ended up making 3 because my gauge changed while I was stressed out over moving. If I have enough yarn of the October graffiti yarn, I'd like to make a pair of these, and I'm going to try. I don't know if it's possible to knit these 2 at a time because of the thumb gussets. I'm gonna give it a try. The worst that can happen is I'll have to frog it and then do it 1 at a time. But that means I might not be able to know that I have enough yarn. I don't know. I'm gonna try it, but I probably won't have enough. If I do have enough to make both mittens, I probably won't have enough to make the top. So I was thinking, this is the yarn from those dragon scale gloves that I had to hold double, and I thought that it would go well with, actually, you can see it better this way. It would go well with as the top, the mitten top with the October graffiti as a nice contrast. So at least I will have a use for this, other than a whole bunch of squares in my blanket. Oh, and the needle, I forgot. This, by the way, this pattern is a free pattern. I don't know if I said that. And the needles are the Chalgoose, not the twist, the Chalgoose number 2, US number 2, size 2.75 millimeters, which is too small. The pattern calls for 3, but it still fits over my head. So this will be nice next fall. I think it'd be really pretty and nice and cozy. And honestly, the yarn is just really nice to work with. I love the way it pulls like this. And it's still striped, but it flashes a lot with that purple. It's a different, I guess because it might be, I guess it's bigger. I definitely cast on a few more extra stitches than the hat, so it pulls in a different way. It stripes and pulls. I don't know, the orange just, I like the way it stripes like that. From my last, my last knitting and crochet whip, let's put it that way, I don't have it, so I frogged it. I wanted to make a Black Lives Matter mask, or no, I have a Black Lives Matter mask. I wanted to make a hat. I wanted to make a beanie. I'm gonna make a white beanie, and then I was gonna use this pattern to do color work to make the Black Lives Matter, and I was gonna put it on the front and the back. So I used the numbers from the sock head cowl hat And I actually did a folded brim on that one, and that came out okay. But when I got to the color work part, I got all the way up through the matter word, just started lives, you know, and then part of the way through the fist, the power fist, and it was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. These are both Patton's Croy. I don't have the ball bands anymore. This is the muslin colorway, and then this is the coal, I think it was. It's not only did it get smaller and smaller, when I did try it on, I realized that this is wool. It's not merino wool, it's wool, which is fine for socks. But then I realized I have some wool hats that I always end up scratching at my hairline a lot because it irritates right here. I decided, you know what, I need to get different yarn out of this. These are going to be something else. So I found this Illusions designer. I'm going to make just a small piece just to try it out. This designer does all kinds of stuff. There's some small simple things. They do a Mona Lisa. There's a pattern to do Mona Lisa in that style, and oh, I'd love to do that. I would need a lot more yarn. I'm going to do something simple first just to try it out, but I love that Illusions thing, and I think there's a few art pieces in there. There's a Van Gogh. I think they do Van Gogh's portrait, but I would love to do more of the artwork. I know the girl with the pearl earring is in there too. Yeah, I want to do that. So I think that's what if not for socks, I'm going to use these for the illusion knitting. So I got this instead. This is a lot softer. This is 85 acrylic and 15% nylon. So this is loops and threads. It's wool-like, and it's just basic white. There's nothing special about it. I don't have black yet because they didn't have it. They had a bin for it, but it wasn't there. They'd sold out, so I've been waiting for it to come in. Every time I go in, it's still not there. But the heavy snow that we got in the winter storm, I think delayed their shipment. So, but I haven't been back there in a while, so they probably have it by now. That is going to be the white for my Black Lives Matter hat. The needles, I'm using the needles right now for the sockhead cowl. I think that's what I'm going to make is when I finish the mittens on the when I finish using up the October graffiti yarn, I'm going to make my Black Lives Matter hat. When we first moved here, we were looking for a church to go to. You know, all the churches were virtual. A lot of them still are, thankfully. The first virtual sermon we went to explore that Sunday morning, the preacher from the pulpit was preaching all lives matter. And I said, nope, I'm not going there. Because the problem, you know, it's frustrating because yes, all lives matter. That is an absolute given. But it doesn't seem to apply to Black people. When you look at George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Emmett Till and all of them, all lives can't matter until their lives matter just as much. And that's not happening so far. So that's why things need to change, and I'm willing to make my stand. Oh, for my last whip, I'm so excited about this. If you recall, last time I showed this book, and it had instructions to make your own spinning wheel out of PVC pipe and a bicycle wheel. And I totally wanted to do it, but I can't find a bicycle wheel. It needs to be like a 13-inch wheel, a 13 by 1, and I can't find that without paying like $40-50. I think most, like a standard size wheel on a kid's bike is like 12 inches. So I think there's a way to finagle the building instructions so that it'll work with a 12-inch wheel. And I found people willing to sell a bike that had a 12-inch wheel, but then I felt bad because I'm like, well, I'm taking a bike from some other kid, you know, because my kids won't ride those. They're too big, or the kids are too big. The bikes are too small, and I'm going to use the wheel anyway. And so I didn't buy it. It was only like $5. And I'm like, they're looking for someone to home this other bike that their kid grew out of, and I'm not actually doing that. I don't know, I felt bad. So I didn't buy it. I still want to spin. I fell down the rabbit hole on YouTube looking at spinning tutorials and spinning fiber shows. I really want to spin my own yarn. I don't want to spend the money on a spinning wheel because they're like, you know, $300-400. I got a drop spindle. I just picked it up on Amazon. It's nothing special. I think it was like $15. Now that I know, it is too heavy. I am spinning a thick yarn and I'm not very good at it. You can see my slugs because I've got like thin and thick, and yeah, I'm not very good yet. My draws are a little off. You know, it's my first yarn, so we'll see. I actually did have a drop spindle a long time ago, before the boys were born. When we lived in Florida, after I fixed my issues with gluten, I stopped eating gluten and I felt better. But then I started getting really intense allergy issues. I've always been prone to sinus infections. I remember when I went to England, I was there for a month, and the night that I was supposed to fly back, I didn't sleep at all because I picked up a sinus infection. And so I had a miserable trip home. It got to the point where I was having headaches every day, sinus pressure headaches. And I found out that I'm allergic to oak trees, which are all over Florida, and dust mites, which love humid places. Dust mites also love fiber. That's where they hide. Florida was the worst place for us to be living, so that's how I talked my husband into moving to Colorado. But before I did that, I got rid of all of my fiber related stuff, including my drop spindle, thinking I would never be able to pick up fiber crafts again because I'm allergic. Not to the craft, to the dust mites. When we moved to Colorado, about a year later, I discovered the keto diet, and that fixed all my allergies, which is why we're in Tulsa, and I'm okay with it. I've got a giant oak tree in the backyard. It doesn't bother me. I do have a problem with coronavirus though. I'm still a long hauler. But anyway, so I wanted to try it again. I don't think I got very far with the drop spindle that I had, and I used pencil roving, so it was almost like I didn't have to work, I just had to spin it. What I did was, when I ordered the spindle, I also ordered just a generic wool. I don't even know what breed or anything this is. It's just wool roving, and it's 4 ounces, almost 4 ounces, so it looks like hair. Maybe I should make myself a wig. But yeah, it's just this forest green, just generic wool roving. It's making this yarn, which is very imperfect. What I might end up doing is just crocheting something out of it when I'm done. I have no idea how I'm going to apply it though, because on the drop spindle, it's got this notch here that when you're spinning, you catch the yarn in that notch, give it a spin. Oh, and I'm spinning in the wrong direction too. I started in the wrong direction before I realized what I was doing, and I'm like, well, I'm just gonna have to spin this one in the wrong direction. I got wrong direction yarn. I'm spinning counterclockwise. It should be clockwise, because when you ply, you go the other way from what you spin. So when I ply it, I'm gonna spin clockwise. When I do go to ply it, I don't know that it's gonna fit in that little notch. I could barely get it in the way it is. So I don't know, maybe it's not that big a deal. That's my new whip. You can get like a full pound of undyed wool roving on Etsy for like 20 bucks. Eventually, I don't know that I could spin a sweater's quantity on a drop spindle, but maybe if I like it enough and I get good at it to the point where I'm ready to go ahead and buy a spinning wheel, or if I can get a bicycle wheel and build my own, I would like to be able to spin a sweater's quantity. And I think the natural undyed wool will look really nice if I do lots of really neat cables, or do like get the black wool from, you know, black or brown sheep, do color work like an Icelandic sweater, I think would be really cool too. So I ended up following 2 new to me YouTube people. One is called The Soulful Spinner, and she does everything natural. She gets the fleece, like they shave, you know, the fleece off the sheep and send it to her. And then she processes it herself, which I think is really cool. I don't know that I'll get that far into it, but I think that would be kind of neat. So she does that, but she doesn't do any dyeing. She will knit with, you know, commercially dyed wools, but she likes the natural look. And then the other one that I followed is Fiber Love Diary. I think her name is Lisa. I can't remember the Soulful Spinner's name. I'll link it below. The Fiber Love Diary, she also does a lot of spinning, but she, you know, She has her own wheel. She has an Etsy shop, and she dyes some really cool wool roving. She dyes before she makes the yarn. So she likes to dye the roving, and then she'll make the yarn. But I love watching it, you know, just the way they just draw it out. So I guess it's a feel thing. I'll just have to get used to how it feels before I spin it up. On to books. I finished reading Misdiagnosed by Jodie Berger, One Woman's Tour of and Escape from Healthcare Land. And I tell you, I totally related to this book. 100%. I am a COVID long hauler. It's coming up to a year since I first came down with the virus. I came down with it on St. Patrick's Day of last year. I haven't been fully healthy since. It's been mimicking my reaction to gluten, so I have a lot of intestinal cramping. Originally, before the virus, whenever I got glutened, it would go away after 6 weeks, the cramping. Like when I first eat gluten, it makes me vomit. And then I'll get feel like there's rocks rolling around in my gut for the next 6 weeks. And then it goes away, but this hasn't gone away. And I know I'm not glutened because when I do accidentally get 2 glutenings, like if I get glutened before I get over the initial glutening, I will vomit. So I know it's a fresh glutening by mistake. And I'm very careful so it doesn't happen very often. And I haven't had that problem. I did vomit while I was isolated with COVID because we ordered the takeout from Chili's and they messed up my order. I had to send it back. And I don't think they had anybody in the kitchen who really understood what they were doing with gluten. And I think they glutened my food because I was vomiting the next day. And ever since I've been cramping about the book. The reason why I identify with it so much is because while I'm going to different like I waited to see specialists because I knew we were moving. So I'm here and I'm seeing a gastroenterologist and an ear, nose, and throat for my vocal cords, which is complete COVID thing. I never have a problem with my vocal cords with gluten. So this is definitely COVID. I never saw a doctor. I've been seeing the nurse practitioners for very short periods of time. I'm not actually seeing the doctors, even though I'm there to see the specialist, I am still seeing the nurse practitioners. I don't get that. That's what happened with her. She saw the neurologist. She was having tingling in her fingers. She saw the neurologist for 15 minutes. He looked at her MRI and said she had MS. 15 minutes. He was absolutely certain she had MS. It made her head spin when she finally was ready to start asking some real questions because she's a journalist. That's why this is such a good read. She couldn't get a hold of him. He said he was going to be fully accessible to her. He gave her his cell phone number and he would never answer her calls. That's how I feel. I'm not actually seeing the specialist. And I'm like, this is different. This is COVID. I need to see a doctor, somebody who went to med school for 8, 10, 12 years. Every time I go in to see these people and I talk about how this is probably COVID related because I was perfectly healthy before I got COVID, they kind of brush it off. And I'm like, you're not listening to me. And that's exactly what happened with her. They wouldn't listen to her. One of my favorite quotes in here, she's actually quoting someone else. Abraham Maslow, he's a psychologist. He's explaining the law of the instrument, which is to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And that's what she was running into. Every time she would see a different type of doctor, they diagnosed her with the disease or problem that they specialize in. They're not looking at her from, a whole standpoint because she goes into her history as a child with food and nobody really talked about it because it's gross and you just don't talk about that kind of stuff. So she didn't know. She thought everybody, had these digestive problems that she had. And it turned out all it was gluten. When she cut gluten out of her diet, all of her problems went away, all the numbness and tingling. She did not have MS. She was gluten intolerant, possibly celiac. She was tested for celiac and it came back negative. I was tested for celiac and it came back negative. My grandmother was positive. She was definitely celiac. So it runs in the family. This is a very good book. If you have some medical problems that you're trying to deal with, and you feel like you're hitting a brick wall with the doctors, you should probably pick up this book, get some inspiration from what she went through. It was so similar. And the other thing about doctors not listening is a lot of times I realized reading this book and thinking about my experience with doctors is they don't want to admit that they don't know. So I found a keto-friendly doctor because I was so sick of my doctors trying to get me off of the high-fat diet. I was having some issues, which I'm going to go into later. And it got to the point where he said, you're just going to have to wait for Denver, because he didn't know. And he was okay admitting that he didn't know. I've never had a doctor tell me that. And that was actually very gratifying. I am listing him as my primary doctor, even though I have to drive an hour and a half to see him. Actually, I have to drive 2 hours. He's in south of Oklahoma City. So I have to drive a long way to see him. So the next book this is the one I'm in the middle of. So not quite halfway. So this is called The Shallows. This came out in 2011, and it's by Mcclure. He's like a tech writer, so he writes for Wired, and he's written a few other books. And again, this is a former library book, so no longer property of PPLD, so I did not steal this. I bought it when I was volunteering at that bookstore. I watched the documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. I know that they probably were planning this documentary even before the pandemic. I see what's going on with my boys and their use of technology, especially now. Charlie struggles to have a decent sense of time. His sense of time is very skewed. William is just insolent half the time. He gets very upset when we take him away from his technology. Honestly, they were easier to deal with when they were 2 and 3. It's been hard. You can't see it because of the stickers, but the subtitle is What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains. This guy he was actually about my mom's age. He noticed when he started using technology, like he was in it in the very beginning. Like he had the first Apple computer in the 80s, and he just upgraded every time. But he realized that his sense of focus was really starting to, like, he struggled to read anything for any length of time. And it's because we're starting to become conditioned to just get highlights because of the way web pages are designed. You know, they're eye-grabbing, eye candy things. What he does is, after he talks about that, he starts talking about our brain. It can adapt, neurologically. He goes into a lot of really in-depth detail about the brain, but then follows that up with history and how our brains have adapted to different technologies that we have created, like watches, clocks, and the printing press, especially because before books were widely available, you had oratory. Beowulf, for example, if you notice the opening song for my show, it's actually Beowulf. It's me singing the first few lines of Beowulf. When I was in college, I learned the first 11 lines in Old English, and I set it to music because it would have been sung to a lyre. The poem itself wasn't written down until I think the 8th century, I want to say. It was just memorized. It was oratory. They just repeated it so much, it was always memorized. In the book, he gives an example of arguments between, I think, Aristotle and Plato, or was it Euripides? I don't remember. It's one of those philosophers that they were trying to decide if the written word was going to destroy humanity because oratory was no longer necessary. And it goes into the way the written word changed the human brain from oratory to reading. The first written word, it was never read silently, which I think that was kind of an interesting point. They still read out loud like they did as an orator. The idea of reading silently didn't come along for a long time. Plus, the form of writing was very difficult to read. They didn't have punctuation and structure like we do today. I'm interested to seeing the way the rest of this goes. I do have a tendency to, like I said, fall down the rabbit hole where YouTube is concerned. I try to source what I'm seeing on the internet. For example, my keto information comes from thedietdoctor.com because they source and cite scientific studies. It's not just, some random guy saying, oh, this is good for you. And these are scientific studies that they're citing, and that's why I know what I'm eating is actually good for me. I'm excited to get to the end of this one. This one I have yet to get to, but I'm mentioning it because I'm almost there. I'm rewatching the Dark Shadows soap opera series. I'm on episode 372, right around the time when Laura Parker, the actress, joins the cast as Angelique. So I got to see her for a few episodes before I recorded this. So I'm almost there because I know that she's a witch. They're not in Salem, so I don't know what that's all about yet. I can't remember the Salem branch part of the show. It's been so long. I'm enjoying it, watching the show, like I said, because of the hokiness. At episode 295 is when it switched to color. What's kind of fun is seeing some of the costumes in the 1967 time frame. So they wear similar, some of the same costumes on different days. The colors are not what I imagined them when they were in black and white. For example, Elizabeth Stoddard wears this checkered blazer and matching skirt. I always imagined it to be pink and gray checkered, but it's actually blue and gray checkered. And then some dresses are green when I thought they were pink, and that was fun. And I'm so glad that they switched to color at this point, because at one point in the black and white part, they wore the clothes of their ancestors and had a party. And I was like, oh, I wish I could see that in color. But I knew that it was coming because I remember there was a time travel element to the plot. So I'm glad that it switched to color now, because I get to enjoy all the pretty costumes and all their colors. To talk about the 42 that I mentioned earlier, I think was how many grams I had left of the cat lady yarn before I started that cowl. The reason why I thought it was funny is because I am rereading The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxies. I'm doing the audiobook so that I can knit and read along. It's been about 20 years since I've read it. And I remember them being so funny. I think I got lost in a lot of the technical jargon words, which I know it's supposed to be just satiric humor. I found those words to be a little distracting. I think it's easier when you listen to the audio version though. I was trying to, I think in my head, figure out how to say this word, but when I just hear it, it's like, it just sounds silly. So I'm in the middle of the second book now, The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, and I really love Douglas Adams' humor. It's just such fun. Also, I am re-listening to the Harry Potter books. I've been meaning to say that, and I keep forgetting because I'm not listening to them during the day. I listen to them to fall asleep. I like to listen to a book to fall asleep, but I want to listen to a book that I've already heard before, because if I fall asleep before the sleep timer shuts off, then I get frustrated trying to figure out where I was before I fell asleep. I'm on the 6th book, the Half-Blood Prince. But Charlie just finished The Goblet of Fire, the 4th book. He is allowed to watch the 4th movie now, and he will be starting Order of the Phoenix, which I think I'm going to have to buy a copy of that book now, because I don't have a copy of it. Maybe the library has it. The best way to get him to read is to have the audio version and a hard copy, so that he can read and follow along. I've tried it with him just reading, and I've tried with him just listening, and he loses interest. But if he has both, it helps him. It has to do with the ADHD and the autism, I think. I'm glad that he's done that. Eventually, when he gets through all of the books, I'd like to save up to take him to Universal Studios in Florida. That was a fun park to go to. I went there with my mom, and we just had fun looking at all the details. I'm not taking them until they actually read the books, and if William won't read them, I'm only taking Charlie. Life stuff. One of the big reasons why it takes me so long to get to a new recording is I'm not doing really well. I'm a coronavirus survivor. I'm a long hauler. Some people, they have coronavirus and they get over it and they're fine. I'm one of those who had a mild case of it and it just won't go away. There are lots of other people. There's a whole Facebook page of people like me. It's called Survivor Corps. There's a website that goes along with it, and on the website is a list of post-COVID care centers, and there are none in Oklahoma, at least not the last time I looked. The closest one was Denver, but they didn't deal with GI issues, only respiratory. And then there's another one in St. Louis, but they only deal with the psychological effects of coronavirus. So there's the closest post-COVID care center for me to go to is in Denver. I have appointments set up just after Easter, so I'm going to fly out and stay with my sister-in-law on their farm. Before I go, I have to isolate for 2 weeks, which means basically I am going to wear a mask everywhere, including in the house, because I can't force my family to isolate as well. We had to do that when I went to visit my mom. That was not fun. So I'm not going to put them through that again. I'm just going to double mask for the 2 weeks before I go. Probably triple mask on the plane, double mask while I'm at my sister's house. I'm not getting anywhere with the doctors here, so that's why I'm going there. So far, I already like what I hear when I did like the intakes and stuff with these doctors. They're very concerned with getting the whole picture, which is how they are going to be able to figure out how to fix me. So I'm going to spend a whole week there seeing the doctors. For the last 2 months, though it's getting better now, I think I'm better, I've been having increased digestive distress. I thought it was FODMAP foods. FODMAP is short for this long acronym that basically means certain foods ferment in your intestine and cause digestion problems. I'm not going to get into too much of it because it's TMI. I'm just going to let you know that I came this close to buying Depends. I think I've got a handle on it. I went to see my keto doctor in Oklahoma City. He thought maybe I picked up a virus or a parasite. So he put me on ivermectin for a little while, but it really didn't do anything. So he suggested an elimination diet, which meant I went full carnivore for 2 weeks. I think it was more like 3 weeks. My nutrients weren't coming from other foods at this point, so I wanted to make sure I got all the nutrients I needed. And the best way to do that is to eat very pure meat, I guess is the way you say it. So it has to be fully grass-fed beef. When you see grass-fed, it might not always mean grass-fed. It might mean it was fed on grass for part of its life and then it was grain finished. Grass-fed beef, it has a lot more nutrients than grain-fed beef. It tastes better too. And because I eat keto, I need high fat. When you eat more natural foods like that, the fats are better. So for example, cows, most commercial cows, they're fed grains. That means they get a lot of health issues, and so they're given a lot of medications and preventative therapies and stuff to fix all that, because they're not meant to eat grain.
And to be honest, we're not meant to eat a lot of it either.
That's why America's so sick. But that's the fastest way to fatten a cow. That's why they feed them grains. The toxins from all of that, they get stored in the fat cells. Even the fat in a grass-fed cow has a lot more nutrition in it. Same with pork, same with chicken. This farm that I found, it's called the Grassroots Ranch, and they have fully grass-fed beef. Their pigs are pastured, so they're not kept in a barn in a confined space like most pork is. Commercial pork is made. These pigs, they have a pecan forest that they can root around in, get their food that way. And then there's the chickens. They're not kept in cages. They have this big movable pen that has a skylight so they can see the sky and everything, and then they move it every day onto different grass so that the chickens can eat the bugs out of the grass like they naturally would do. That has more nutrients in it. So everything is more nutritious if you eat meat that way. So that when I had to go full carnivore,
Carnival?
I had to make sure that all my meat was absolutely natural. Like it's hard to find pastured chicken. Like you can find pastured eggs at the grocery store, but you can't find pastured chicken. Same with pork. Grass-fed beef is always iffy. This ranch provided everything that I've been able to eat for the last 2 weeks. It's really good, but it meant that I needed a different cooking oil because I couldn't use olive, I couldn't use coconut, and I can't use butter. So what do I cook in? The ranch will sell 5 pounds of pork fat to you so that you can render your own lard. So that was a new thing for me. I'd never rendered lard before. The only problem I have with it is you have to cut it into teeny tiny pieces. I've got some on the stove right now. You have to start first thing in the morning because it takes all day. You cook it very slow on a low setting. You just let the fat melt into the oil. I save the cracklings from just frying up a little bit of chicken. I'll toss in some cracklings. The other thing the cracklings are good with, this was another first for me, is liver. I had never eaten liver before, let alone cooked it. And I know that there's ways to cook it so it's not so potent. Like I guess you soak it in milk to take away a lot of that potent flavor, but I couldn't do that. I just had to fry it in the pork fat and toss in some pork cracklings. I ate it. I didn't like it at first. It wasn't my favorite part of the cow, but maybe because this is grass-fed liver, it wasn't that bad. I ate it because it's really nutrient dense, and that's what I needed. So I don't eat for flavor so much anymore. I eat for nutrients. Although I did try chicken liver, and no, that was like eating fish bait. So I've been eating liver every night, and it's cheap. It's like $5 for 1 pound bag of liver. So I've been eating that every night. I'm getting used to it, actually. It's not bad, but I make sure I put plenty of salt in it because I am having episodes of I'll black out if I stand up too fast, and I'll black out trying to make sure I have plenty of saline in my food. I had been eating that way for about 2 weeks, and it still wasn't helping, and that's when my keto doctor said, I don't know. But he suggested, because I'd tried the brat diet initially, because my other doctor told me to eat that way, and it didn't help. I ate the brat diet for 3 days, and it did nothing. It turns out apples are a FODMAP food. So he suggested that I temporarily add carrots, which are not keto, but it was just to try starch, and it was only temporary. And the starch seemed to help. So far, so good. I ate carrots for about 5 days, and that helped. I'm out of carrots, so I haven't been eating them. And so far, I haven't had any more problems. I've added frozen strawberries because of my throat. That was my first food that I wanted to try to add. And then I added the cream, the heavy cream, because it's always better on my throat to have the cream in there too. And when I was good with that, I tried raspberries, and so far so good on that one. I think the next thing I'm going to try is coffee, because I had to even give up decaf coffee in order to, figure out what was going on with my digestion. So far so good. I still have zero energy. I still, I try to take a walk. I'll walk around the block, and it aggravates everything, all of the cramping. I get winded. I'm tired, and it's frustrating because I want to, I want to do things. I want to, build stuff, and I want to start a compost pile in the backyard, and I don't have any energy. It's really frustrating. So that's where I'm at. I'm really starting to lose my voice in earnest now because I've done this twice. So I think I'm going to go have some more frozen berries and cream, see if my lard is rendered long enough. I will leave it at that. I hope you get to make all the yarny things and read all the books. And I hope you stay safe. I hope you stay well. Please wear your mask, and I will see you next time.